What happened at a wedding that let you know the marriage was going to end in a divorce? My cousin, the bride, told us, as she was going from table to table thanking the guests, that she didn't think it would last. We were stunned. They lasted about a year. My uncle red-faced and screaming at 14-year-old me on his wedding day to make sure I wear condoms so I don't have to marry some itch I knocked up. Edit. Word. Edit. This was 30 years ago when having children out of wedlock still carried a stigma. I'm sure my grandfather told my uncle to do the right thing and marry her. My mother, who is older than my uncle, got kicked out of the house at 18 for being pregnant with me, and I'm sure that influenced my uncle's decision. The groom's vows. Dear bride, we've had our ups and downs, mostly downs. Edit. No, the groom did not call her bride. I just used that as filler. I realize this makes it significantly less funny and I'm sorry you are disappointed. The groom didn't look at the bride once. The groom invited his female friend. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. Towards the end of the night, the bride asked her aforementioned friend who the father was. The friend cheerfully said the groom's name. Friend got married. On his honeymoon, his wife went to the spa. He stayed in the room to chill. Housekeeping came. Young cute girl. Friend paid her for a blowjob. Told me about all proud. Didn't last a year. The bride, whom I didn't even know, apparently designated me to help decorate the reception hall prior to the wedding. I went to do so, and her mother was there, telling me in a hushed, scared whisper that I better not mess anything up because the bride would be furious. Everything was to be a certain way, and if it was wrong, there'd be hell to pay. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, chalked it up to wedding anxiety, and during the reception I tried to chat with her a bit and she literally rolled her eyes at me. I also didn't see her look at the groom once at the wedding or the reception. They were split less than a year later. The groom confided to me and my husband that the morning of the wedding he'd been filled with an overwhelming feeling of dread and spent several hours just sitting on his lawn, thinking, I shouldn't do this. But it was paid for. Tons of guests were waiting. Lots of family, including us, had come in from out of state, and he felt he had to go through with it. Apparently the bride had a history of being awful and controlling. No clue what made him propose to her in the first place. Just Facebook stalked the ex-bride. Her latest status update is announcing her wedding date with a new guy. Someone jokingly asked in the comments if they've set a date for the divorce. Oh snap. Groom got caught getting frisky with a bridesmaid. That marriage lasted for about 2 hours. Dude said the wrong name at the altar. Her vows. They were friends of mine who dated for nearly 2 years before their wedding. He loved her more than she loved him. Obvious to all our friends. And we suspected she begrudgingly said yes to his proposal. He said his vows first and went on and on about loving her for the rest of his life. During hers, she started with 438 days. That's how long I've loved you. It seemed sweet until she ended her vows with, and I promise to love you for at least 438 more. Most thought nothing of it and some friends called me a D for saying it was a subconscious sign she wasn't in it for the long haul. She left him exactly that amount of days after the wedding with a note that said I kept my vow to love you for 438 days more, but I can't for a single day more. Called it. We knew the couple was in trouble when they frowned during most of the ceremony and later didn't go on a honeymoon because they couldn't agree on a destination. They had plenty of money, just no desire to compromise. My sister's new husband made out with a bridesmaid on the dance floor of the reception. A bunch of my family members are betting on how long one of my cousin's marriage would last. It's definitely going to end in divorce, but we just don't know when. Here's all that happened. Pre-wedding, the couple can't even agree on invitation card designs, so they decided each would have their own. Some people received 2 invitations. Wedding, they're both from different races, and the groom's family insisted on having a wedding ceremony from their culture too. The bride refused the part where she has to kneel before her husband and wash his feet clean. The groom's family insisted and she was stuck doing it. The bride got tired with all the photo taking and refused to pose for any more photographs. Even though she hadn't taken photos with the groom's extended family. Meanwhile, she had already taken photos with her entire family, extended family, and parents' friends. The groom's cousin told the bride she walked in elegantly and she spent hours crying and refusing to come out for the wedding dinner. Half the groom's family boycotted the wedding over the bride's race and religion. Post-wedding, the bride insisted they should fly first class for their honeymoon. The groom insisted it's a waste of money, even though they both come from money. The bride flew first class. The groom stuck to economy. They spent $50k on a Disney wedding and the bride spent zero time anywhere near the in-laws for several hours. She ran off a week later. Edit. Holy it. My inbox. Here's to you, uncle. That itch can eat it. Ha 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 ha. Also, he's not my uncle by blood, but that's how I know he's a good guy. Maybe closer to a savior of the messed up in the head, but still good. The groom, groomsmen, groom's friends, groom's father, etc. All males, just for clarification, kept making jokes about being tied down, having a nagging wife, the end of being single, or being able to flirt with other women. Basically everything was about how marriage actually sucks. This is something I will never understand. If marriage sounds that awful to you, why even get married? During the ceremony when the priest started asking the bride, do you take this man to be your? She started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop. It was cute for about 10 seconds and then things got real uncomfortable. They lasted a year and change. We all kinda knew the only reason they were getting married was because she got pregnant. The bride had the minister put till death or divorce, do us part into the ceremony. While saying the classic I do, instead of looking deep into his bride's eyes, the groom was peeking at one of the bridesmaids. At the rehearsal dinner, the groom's mom is in tears because he looks miserable and he was. We all knew it. During the vows they had written for each other, the bride starts with, I know I can be a pretty terrible person, and I don't know why you've stuck around, but that's all going to change starting today. They were divorced a year later. My cousin's wedding. The groom invited his ex, who was also the mother of his 1-year-old son. He and my cousin had been dating for longer than 2 years, and my cousin, who was then very pregnant herself, got into a loud screaming match with him over it in a bathroom. They eventually came out and got married. My cousin with puffy red eyes from crying that you can see in every wedding photo that was taken. I was working at a wedding factory. On Monday we got a call the Saturday wedding was cancelled. They were told that they would lose the deposit, around $7,000. Then on Thursday they said it was back on. When the guests arrived everyone was pissed off. It seems they told everyone it was off. Then 2 days later that it was on. The ceremony was about 3 minutes. The bride then changed into sweatpants and then everyone got angry drunk. Well, this won't last long, I thought. Then on the following Monday the bride walked into my then wife's divorce attorney's office. The groom called the bride a cunt at the reception. They totally got divorced. The day of her wedding, I asked my sister-in-law if she was enjoying her day and all she said was, it's a ducking nightmare. This is the worst day of my life. At the end of the reception the guys are sitting at a table away from everyone else talking and we ask the groom why he proposed. His answer? Because she was naked. Marriage lasted about 1.5 years. I was reunited with a family member just before her wedding. We went out drinking, and she proudly pointed out a guy at the bar that she'd just gone on a trip with and had a week-long prenup 6 romp. She seemed to think I'd think that was naughty and funny. I just felt bad for her future husband, but figured it was just a bad choice. The day of the wedding, I went to see her in the bridal suite. She had the guy there him. She's ducked him the night before the wedding. They lasted a few years, but it was a miserable few. She flinched when he turned to kiss her. They were divorced within 6 months. He didn't look me in the eyes during the entire ceremony. He stared at the preacher the whole ducking time. Gave me a kiss on the hand when it was time to kiss the bride. Also, didn't tell me that his father was a sexual pervert that wanted to pound me. He thought it was normal and okay for his dad to think this about me. Edit. I truly didn't expect this to gain this much attention, but thank you guys for commenting and asking questions. I was having a shitty day earlier, but remembering some of this crazy marriage, it has given me a few laughs this evening and reminded me of how great of a life I have now. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks again. Edit 2. Wow. First off, The top 5 list is posted under all these comments. I posted it last night before all of this really gained attention. I didn't expect anyone else to be interested this much into my story lol. I haven't checked this since last night, about 12 hours, and there were a ton of more comments and questions. But thanks again, everyone. The groom would not stop crying. He cried through the entire ceremony and most of the reception. When the father of the bride tells the groom, how can you marry somebody like her? You are too nice. You deserve better. Surely enough, the marriage lasted less than 3 years. During the whole time, the wife was doing drugs and prostituted herself to get money for drugs. The groom looked drunk and the bride seemed incredibly angry. Then there was this woman walking around during the reception placing bets on when they would divorce. I later found out she was the mother of the groom. I thought my sister's wedding was. Her husband got blackout drunk and they got into an argument. He passed out and she ended up throwing a bucket of ice water in his face to snap him out of it. She was devastated about it. Happy ending. He made it up to her big time. Also, he felt very out of it. Even the next day. Turns out he had traces of Rohypnol in his system. His own brother roofied him in hopes he wouldn't marry my sister because he wanted their own friendship to remain the same. My brother-in-law has disowned most of his family because of this and his brother just got out of a 4-year prison sentence. Just got married 2 weeks ago. Wife's father engraved her name and wedding date on the cake knife. Mine was absent. Edit. I'll keep you guys updated. Edit 2. My name was absent from the knife. Wedding was going okay until the bride and groom got hammered. Groom's baby mama ex showed up. Then the bride proceeded to lock herself in a room crying and continuing to drink by herself. It was a shitty show to say the least. Our friend was the girl who had spent a whole year setting up for the one day. They had taken 6 months of dancing lessons and she has spent a ridiculous amount of time looking good and dressing up her bridesmaids for the wedding of which my wife was one. So come the night of the wedding, the groom meets up with his old friends and starts to get blackout drunk. He got so drunk he didn't even recognize us, rather just pushing us aside to get to the bathroom. The worst part was the dance itself. It was really heartbreaking to see them stumble around and watch the panic on her face as he realized he had no idea what was going on. I gave it 6 months at the time, but they ended up 3 years. She ended up marrying another woman. Toward the end of the reception, the bride suggested to the groom he run home and change into street clothes so they could clean the venue and get the deposit returned. Groom got back and bride had opened all the gift envelopes and paid back relatives with the cash they contained. Source: the groom was me. I do audio visual for social events, a lot of weddings. At one engagement party, my co-worker tells the story of the soon-to-be groom trying to carry off his soon-to-be bride. You know, because he is manly and will have his way with her. Anyways, she is screaming at him to put her down and when he finally complies she slaps him right across the face and yells, "I'm not done dancing." It was a shotgun wedding, they proudly proclaimed it as such. Overheard the bride's mother saying that the bride was such a later bloomer for waiting until 19 to trap herself a man. The child is 3 years old and they have been separated. Don't know if divorced, since she was 1. At my brother's wedding his bride gave him the cheek at the "you may kiss the bride" part. Yeah, she ended up cheating on him with some guy online in less than a year. Sister's wedding. Husband ends speech saying, "Thanks for settling for me." 18 months later agree to divorce. The bride got blackout drunk and asked me to kill her husband. He was busy fighting one of his groomsmen in the other room. They divorced 2 years later. The groom saying the bride looked really chubby in her wedding dress. The groom making fun of the deaf grandmother. The groom existing. The bride invited her ex-BF of 7 years to the wedding. Walking in on the groom getting railed by one of the groomsmen in the suite at the resort during the reception. Bride had cold feet prior, but decided she was into it. At the ceremony she freaked out when priest whoever said they'd handle sending the license stuff in instead of her being able to handle it later. Her way out. Bride was on her phone the whole time at the wedding. All her family and friends were there. So who was she texting? Turns out it was her boss, who was also at the wedding. And if you're thinking they were getting down to some sexy talk, you're wrong. The groom now increasingly paranoid. Later found a text sent by his wife during the ceremony which read, "I can't wait to start a family with you." He found that text whilst on honeymoon. Bear in mind too that this girl had pestered him to propose for 10 years and would cry on nights out because he hadn't yet popped the question. Broke up a month after the ceremony. Divorced in 3. Happy ending though. 3 years after this happened he gets married again next weekend to a great girl, and his ex is married too now I hear. I suppose even villains deserve a happy ending. I'd love to hear how they covered this whole it show in the speeches at her second wedding though. This whole story has also reaffirmed my decision to avoid spending 20 grand to watch people I hate eat quiche. My lady and I will go on holiday, hire a priest and some monkey ushers, then get wasted and come home married. Edit. Clarifying that the guy is getting married this weekend, not the weekend after his last marriage failed. They only got married because they had unprotected sex on their first date and conceived a child. Fast forward a few months. The bride objects to going to the groom's friend for flowers for the wedding because she has a religious objection to the gay lifestyle. Turns out she's also incredibly racist. The groom is not homophobic or racist at all and was appalled to find out that his new wife wouldn't approve of most of his friends. The baby hasn't even been born yet and the divorce is pending. Not all of it was at the wedding, but on our way to our honeymoon, we were on a flight with this couple sitting behind us. She boarded the plane with a giant carry-on and a garment bag with her dress in it. Once they found their seats, she shoved her bags at him to put away, and then went to use the lavatory for about 15 minutes. She was really nasty towards him the whole time. Fast forward to running into them at the resort. She was super stuck up and itchy to every female, and all of the staff. She didn't seem to have a problem grinding on 4 or 5 different guys during one of the dance nights themed events while her husband to be drank alone at the bar. Finally, the day of their wedding came and my husband ran into the groom sitting alone outside at the cafe with a drink in his hand. He sat down to chat with him and the guy explained that he was freaking out because they had no friends or family at the wedding, because literally no one that knew him liked her or approved of the wedding, and that he wasn't even sure what he was doing there. My husband tells him he's sure it's cold feet, and to just have a drink to calm his nerves. The groom replies that this is his 5th drink. It's like 11 AM already. We had an oceanfront villa and they got married right outside of our back door. He looked like he was going to bolt for sure. I guess that was her plan the whole time. Trap him on a remote island. 2. 1. At what I've dubbed the worst wedding ever. The bride and groom were an hour late, argued with everyone at the wedding, ran out of food at the reception, and made the groom's mom cried by yelling at her. 2. When the bride cried through the entire ceremony, it clicked in my head that she wasn't just roommates with the guy she lived with, not the groom. They were an actual couple. She married the groom because her mom wanted her to do so. A year later, she was making up this story about the husband being a control freak, like that crummy Julia Roberts movie where she runs away from the freaky husband. Meanwhile, the guy was just nice and quiet and didn't do anything that she said he did. My own first wedding. 21-year-old pregnant bride, extremely hungover groom. 10 family members in my aunt's backyard on a muggy August morning. An officiant named Tim Rip Van Winkle. I am so glad I got out of that one alive with my kids. Groom got so drunk at the reception he passed out in the honeymoon suite by himself, but not before he latched the door so it couldn't be unlocked from the outside. Seeing the bride kicking the door and hollering at the top of her lungs to be let in at 3 AM was not encouraging. They divorced like 2 years later. Guy secretly told his whole extended family that it was an open bar. It wasn't and he knew it. The bride's family was paying for everything. Groom's family racked up hundreds of pounds worth of whiskeys, ports, liquors etc. Dude went on to defraud bride of $10,000 less than a month later. Was already in the process of amassing that debt in her name before the wedding. Duck that guy. Edit. For those confused. He told his family all drink was included as part of the flat fee the bride's parents had already paid. But thanks for the 500 of you all pointing out the same thing. I get it. I wasn't clear. Edit 2. Read the ducking edit guys. Edit 3. Gold, tight. Not at the wedding, but the bride having been ducking one of my friends for a full month before the wedding because he reminded her of an ex. was a pretty strong sign. The groom said in his speech, when I joined a dating agency I never thought I'd be so lucky as to find my own personal cook, dishwasher, and washing machine. Not only is that a ratty way to describe anyone, he's in for a nasty surprise when he realizes his wife is actually a complete diva and will expect him to do all those things for her. Bad relationship all round. My cousin got his casual hookup pregnant and somehow they came to the conclusion that they needed to get married. Instead of going and getting quietly married, they decided they needed a gigantic expensive wedding, like 5-course meal, 300 plus guests, 12 bridesmaids, kind of wedding. Obviously, something like this takes a while to plan, and as a result, she was about 7 months pregnant. Now, nothing wrong with going down the aisle while expecting, but she chose this corseted dress that was cinched so tight it nearly flattened her bump out. As someone who has been pregnant, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that must have been. The fact that they had only known each other 8 months and she was 7 months pregnant was like the elephant in the room the entire wedding. She refused to acknowledge the fact that she was pregnant. She had been out of college for 10 plus years and invited all her sorority sisters. They got up and all sang this weird sorority song together. Very odd for an over 30 woman. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it was like she was trying to act like she was much younger. They were married about 4 years. Way longer than anyone thought it would last. 4 people made speeches. The bride joked about the first time she dated the groom when she was 16 and he was 26. The groom was wasted and spoke about how each of the previous times they broke up didn't count and that they would do it right this time. The maid of honor talked about how even when they were broken up they still got along. And the best man made itty jokes. Groom's brother didn't attend because he too had banged the bride before. Apparently the bride had explicitly asked that the baby mama ex not be there. I was not part of the actual conversation, but was told that it was communicated to her. Well, she showed up anyway, and knowing her personality, doesn't surprise me. The groom stabbed his new brother-in-law to death, with the knife used to cut the wedding cake no less. Well, technically it happened at the reception, not the wedding. Backstory, about 4 years before the wedding, the wife's brother had shot her in the leg during an argument. Yes, alcohol was involved. At the reception he started loudly telling the guests that he wished he'd shot her in the head instead, at which point the groom got stabby. Alcohol was again involved. I'm going to a wedding later today. Now I have something to do. Edit. For how dysfunctional my family is. It actually turned out really well. Groom's mistress found out he was getting married and showed up at the wedding. In the middle of the I do's. Walked right up on stage and smacked him in the face.